We are now at 2024 reInvent, and on popular demand, these two gentlemen are back. Today, we are going to talk about a lot of different things. 10 years of serverless, where should be serverless be used, Gen AI, are developers going to lose their job to Gen AI models, and some more. But first of all, let me introduce my guests. Heeki, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I was here last time, but my name is Heeki. I'm a specialist SA here at AWS covering serverless, but also next generation developer experience, so really excited to talk about developers.
Excellent.
Hi, my name is Dhiraj Mahapatro, and I'm a principal serverless specialist SA for financial services customers, and now I do a lot of Gen AI with Bedrock.
Glad to have you back in the show. All right, let's talk about 10 years of serverless. 10 years is a long time, okay? You go from black hair to gray hair like me.
Yeah.
So serverless has become pretty huge.
Yes.
Considering all the trends, which areas should the viewers focus on about serverless?
Yes, I think one of the key areas that we're seeing a lot is one is integration services, but also around data processing. So we're seeing lots of customers building asynchronous workloads where they're ingesting events or different data payloads, and you want to find a really good way to stream or process this data in near real time and to get some of those insights, glean some of those insights as quickly as possible. So that's some of what I'm seeing.
Okay,
Yeah,
how about you, Dhiraj?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's similar with enterprise and startups as well that I have seen. Like starting with smaller experimentations, but learning how to deal with ETLs, like extract, transform, and load. And then slowly I've been looking at how serverless has become ubiquitous around generative AI applications. So you'll find some Lambda, some SQS, some SNS, some event-based, some step functions, somewhere used when people are building or customers are building generative AI applications. So that's a new trend.
Excellent. So basically the existing EDA is keep on growing, the integrations, and the Gen AI is coming into the picture. So I have to ask this question because I get this a lot. Are developers going to lose their job because of Gen AI?
Absolutely not. So one thing that I do see, and again, I think about this a lot, these coding assistants are helpful for generating, again, as we're aware, certain code snippets. But one of the things that I'm thinking about and what I'm pushing here at AWS when we think about these coding assistants is the reduction of developer toil. So while coding assistants might be able to generate some code, what we want to ensure is that you developers, as you're building applications, as you're writing code, those are actually the things that you want to do. We don't want to eliminate the things that you want to do. In fact, we want to eliminate the things that you don't want to do. This could be things like, maybe I don't really like writing unit tests. Maybe I don't really like writing documentation.
Yes.
Maybe I don't like refactoring code necessarily. Maybe I don't like uplifting versions from an older version, maybe deprecated or legacy, to a newer version. So that's what I would call developer toil. These tend to be things that developers don't want to do. Yeah. And I would say that's where a lot of the movement in this space around these coding assistants is helping with these tasks that developers don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, that's spot on. The other aspects are developers definitely will not be losing any job to any coding companion. Think about it as a coding companion, they are your partner sitting next to you, watching around your shoulders and guiding you through as to how you can build robust systems. Imagine a scenario where you are new to a team and you don't know what an existing application is doing. With Coding Assistant, you can actually generate the documents. You can generate the pseudo docs which talks about what actually the code does. You don't have to go through and eyeball code line by line. So that helps newer people to actually get up to speed faster. Now on the contrast, if you're an experienced developer, you might not want to do the ad hoc task of writing the same code n number of times, like going through a loop or going through a map. You might just hand it over to an assistant who can do it for you efficiently, where you can focus your brains on actually figuring out how to write the business logic as quickly as possible. So any ad hoc tasks, like Heeki mentioned, like writing tests, generating documents, optimizing code, all of this can be handled by coding assistants today. So think of it as you have a pair programmer sitting next to you, helping you all the way and making you a better developer day by day.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that. I'm assuming that you're watching this video because you're very interested in learning, you want to continue growing. One thing that I often see, and this is actually an example of myself, so I was doing some leak code exercises. I'm kind of a Rust wannabe. My natural language that I enjoy developing in is in Python. A little bit of Java that Dhiraj and I have battled over, but I've been wanting to learn Rust, and so I would do these leak code exercises to just practice writing in Rust. And as I was writing it, I was writing it, and I was almost intentionally writing it inefficiently, but just to get an initial correct implementation. But in my head, I was like, in Python, I know I wouldn't do it this way. I just don't know how to do it correctly in Rust. And so then I wrote an implementation, I submitted it. It was correct. It wasn't performant. And then what I did was I used the Amazon Q developer, and then I highlighted the code and I said, this doesn't seem right. Is there a way to refactor this in a way that's idiomatic to Rust, in a way that's correct? And it gave me this refactored snippet, and I was like, I just learned something new.
And some reasoning around that.
Yeah,
why
and it gives a full explanation. And so it ended up teaching me more about the language. And so for folks out there, if you're learning a language or learning another language, another programming language, it gives you an opportunity to learn idiomatic ways to do it, other techniques that maybe you didn't realize that were available to you.
And I have one story like that with Q Developer where I was able to build a full-fledged application, a Java application that detects anomaly on files with hash transactions and write test cases around it, all of them by Q Developer as a coding assistant, all of them done in less than 5 hours in one sitting. So all I had to do is figure out what the requirements are, ask those questions properly, and let Q Developer generate that project for me. Now I would say it's not 100% hunky-dory. You as a developer will also try to have your own style of writing code. So wherever you feel like, oh, I can write this one according to my style, you can definitely do that once the code is generated. But I would highly encourage trying them out.
Okay, so we talked about using Gen AI on the IDEs. I do have one follow-up question. Can this Q developer for IDE does infrastructure as code as well?
Yeah, it does. And so that's the amazing thing is, so this Q developer, it's basically trained on all of these repositories that are available to you. So, I, as a serverless developer, I like using the serverless application model, or SAM. You could do it with CloudFormation. I've done it with Terraform as well. And so again, depending on what you prefer, it actually does a really good job. And here's the nice thing, with Q Developer, because of course it's an AWS product, it's really good at doing AWS SDKs, AWS infrastructure as code, and really fills in. So if you're new to either writing in SAM or using CloudFormation or Terraform, but you're new to using Lambda as an example, and there's a lot of properties in there and you don't really know which ones to do it, Q Developer will actually help you get up and running pretty quickly.
That's incredible. And then you can also put your infrastructure as code and ask it to explain.
Yes.
And it will explain what it is doing.
In the same story with the anomaly detection I was talking about, I initially started with just writing up the code, but then I asked a cross question to Q Developer. Hey, I forgot to mention that I want Maven integrated with it. So it generated a POM file. Right after that, I asked, hey, I want to integrate Terraform as my infrastructure code. So it generated the Terraform file. So it is all conversational based. That's why I said it's like a peer who is sitting next to you and helping you with writing code. So yeah, definitely you can try all of those aspects.
I think another example, Raj, you had also mentioned like the ability to explain.
Yes.
One use case that I see often with my customers, maybe again you're new to development, or maybe you're new to a new company, right? So you're actually a really good developer, but you just started a new job at a new company. Congratulations.
And you were given to work on an existing legacy code.
Exactly. So if you're working on an existing repo, so what you could do is you can go and clone that repo onto your local laptop, open it up in your IDE of choice, you install the AWS toolkit, and then you could basically select it and say, Q, can you explain what this code is doing? In fact, you could actually go at the workspace level and say, explain what this entire repository is doing.
Exactly.
And you'll get a full explanation of what modules you're using, what frameworks you're using, the infrastructure as code you're using, how unit tests are working. So it does a really good job to help you onboard not only to a language, but maybe at a company to a new project.
So Dhiraj, you are in Gen AI plus serverless. What if someone does not want to go into these IDEs? Okay, how can they get started with Gen AI from the AWS itself?
Okay, so we have been talking about IDEs for coding companions. So that is one aspect where generative AI behind the scenes can help you to write better code. What about use cases where you want to use generative AI and you want to build applications that works with the large language models and actually makes your business process better. For that, you need a service like Amazon Bedrock, which allows you to work with different types of foundation models, like Anthropic's model, Cohere, Meta's Llama model, and Mistral, and many more. So Amazon Bedrock is a serverless service. So you can just pick one model and figure out what works best for you, and then you can start playing around with it in Amazon Bedrock Playground. Once you figure out that it is actually working to your needs, then you can think about how can I interact with this model through an API. So it circles back to the coding companion, where you can come back to the IDE and ask you, hey, I'm trying to write a Lambda function which can interact with Bedrock, and I'm going to pass some questions, and I want to use XYZ model. And then you'll get the code in your Lambda function that is actually using the Bedrock SDK and invoking it. So you get both sides of the worlds where you use generative AI to actually help you write code, and actually using generative AI to help your business grow.
Okay, that's great. So when someone's getting started, is Bedrock the easiest way to get started?
Yes.
Okay, and do
right
you have a
now-
bunch of samples and repo that people can go to and get started, like workshops like that?
Yes, we do have many workshops with Bedrock. You will have a workshop that talks about some of the intricate details of how large language models work. Like you will hear this term RAG more often. It's called retrieval augmented generation, and how RAG is done, what is knowledge base. All of these are part of workshop that are available publicly. If you just Google, you'll find it, or just go to AWS samples and you'll find a lot of samples using Bedrock and doing all those capabilities.
So what are some challenges you see with where we are in this space, and what is AWS doing to solve those challenges?
Yeah, so I actually want to parlay on something
Okay,
that Dhiraj
okay,
said,
yeah.
and then we can go into the challenges.
Yeah.
I'm not actually focused on Bedrock, but one thing that I like just to make, maybe as an outsider or maybe as a partner, thinking about what is Bedrock and what are all these models. A simple way that I like to think about it is it's just an API,
Exactly.
right? So if you think about it, you have these models or you can do all this RAG and all these fancy terms that, again, a lot of us need to spend some time learning what they do. At the end of the day, you have some set of input, a prompt.
Yeah.
So you have some text input that you want. You call the Bedrock API, and these models basically do some magic for you,
Yeah.
and then produce some nice output.
Yeah.
So I think one of the challenges that I often see is in the serverless world, it's just consuming an API. And so one thing that you'll notice is, again, with these like ChatGPT and some of these, again, with Party Rock,
Yeah.
the experience we expect is that we get quick responses. However, when you're interacting with Bedrock APIs, sometimes if you do a synchronous request, it takes 10, 20, maybe 30 seconds depending on the nature of it, right? So I know as a serverless developer that I love Lambda and I'm passionate about Lambda, you can't really do that in a synchronous way, right? And so what I've seen in other situations is you could actually use something like step functions, right? So step functions, if you don't know what it is, it's just a workflow orchestrator, and you could actually offload that from Lambda and have step functions make those calls,
Yeah.
and then you could do a bunch of work around there. So I know, Dhiraj, you've done some work around
Yeah.
building some prototypes
Yep.
around like insurance claims processing and document processing, where we could use the LLM model in a workflow and then do a lot of really cool stuff. Maybe you could share a little bit about what you do in that space.
One of the coolest thing that I did is you'll hear this term in Bedrock called Bedrock agents. Agents are actually those orchestrators which can work on your behalf to do multiple things and take some actions. The example that Heeki was mentioning about is, instead of agents, how can I do this efficiently using step functions? Step functions is where you invoke a model, and the model will let you know what should be your next action. That's it. When it says what should be your next action, then instead of having a non-deterministic response, which LLMs are infamous for, you tend to become or converge towards a deterministic response, and it will just tell you, you should take this, you should do this action, and it becomes your ownership as a step functions builder to actually invoke that tool and feed that data back to the large language model so that it can figure out what should you do next. There's a blog that I mentioned about this whole process, and I talked about this in the reInvent yesterday or 2 days before at the breakout session, which will be available in YouTube, and
I'll
they
put
can
the link.
learn more. So overall, you can, the power of a generative AI and the speed of serverless, when you combine both of them together, the good thing is that you can fail fast, if something is not working, which allows you to move to the market faster. So that's the entire setup.
So maybe going back to your original question
Yeah.
around challenges,
Yeah.
I know that we just went pretty deep. So maybe if we were to bubble that up a
Yes.
little bit, I know one challenge is just like Dhiraj was saying, this is moving so quickly. There's so much to learn, and maybe we could share some of the resources that Dhiraj
Yes.
and I use to learn. Like again, just learning 3 or 4 different models and what are they really good at, and then you could imagine, you know, my recommendation, this is challenge / recommendation, is like the challenge of learning. So find a number of blog resources. I'm a big podcast listener, so I listen to a lot of AI podcasts. There's different email newsletters that I get to learn about this. So again, I think one challenge is just keeping up with all of the innovation, and then thinking about ideas and use cases. And what I want to recommend and encourage the listeners here is build. Go and build stuff. So go and listen to podcasts, learn about and do some of the workshops that Dhiraj had mentioned,
Yeah.
learn about these models, think about step functions, but then try to think of a use case for yourself where you can say, you know what, all of what these guys are saying here on this video, it sounds so complex, it sounds like really hard to attain. But you know what, when you start with a little bit of learning and then you do a little bit of building, it becomes a little bit less complex and you're like, I think I get it. And, and when you actually run it for the first time, it's like really exciting. And so that's kind of one, like again, a challenge / recommendation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I love this because a lot of my viewers are trying to get into this cloud space.
Yes.
I think the best way is to do is like find a use case that you like and then just run with it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Experiment with it, see how it fits. Always think about your organizational use case or some problem that you want to solve with what you are learning right now. That will help you like thrive, and it'll be an unquenchable thirst of learning more. So you'll learn more and you'll always try to solve problems. So pick up one problem that you see is persistent and find out if generative AI and serverless can fix that for you.
I love it. Unquenchable thirst. Someone scored high in English. Okay. This is one of my question. How deep do they have to know like machine learning models and all that stuff to get into Gen AI?
So here's a nice thing, like with Bedrock APIs, you don't. With the coding assistants like QDeveloper, you just need to install an extension. Like I'm a VS Code user, you just install an extension and you get all of the benefits. Now, that said, you don't have to be deep. I am a little bit of a nerd. I enjoy doing that. And this is the balancing act, right? As a practitioner, you don't really need to know a lot of it. But if you're curious, again, you can find a lot of these resources and get really deep. And then it helps you as you build. Like again, you think about a use case and you're like, I don't know how to really solve that. And again, maybe initially you're like, I don't know which model to use. And then you start to learn how to use the model. And then eventually you're like, I really want to know how that model works. What are they doing under the hood? So short answer is no, you don't need to know what the models do. But I hope you're curious and continue to learn under the hood.
So I have a follow-up question because a lot of my viewers are trying to get jobs as a general SA, right?
Okay.
How much of a Gen AI should they know to be a good general SA?
Okay, so I think we can have a lot of different answers here.
Yeah.
I would say just know enough to be conversant with your customers, right? So again, here at AWS, we're all about what the customer needs and wants. As much as we're techies, we're propeller heads, and we always want to get deep into the weeds. At the end of the day, it's what does my customer do? So if your customer has a specific use case, again, maybe you're going to be industry aligned. So if you're in media and
Public sector.
entertainment or in global financial services, whatever that is, try to think about like what are the use cases that particular industry is using, and then how to apply. So again, you spend some time learning about those models. How could I use that model to help my customers?
Exactly.
Like I think that would be a good way to get thinking about if you want to be a generalist SA here at AWS. That's a great way to get it.
This aligns back to what I was mentioning earlier, right? Find the problem that you want to solve. So that is the motto for us to work backwards from our customer. If you are that customer, if you are in that organization and you have seen a problem, like for example in public sector or in GFS or financial services, there is a lot of hard copy documents that goes back and forth for loan origination or for claims processing. So that is one of the examples. Can that be simplified with generative AI? And that will make you learn what is RAG. That will make you learn how to fine tune. So a lot of those things will stack one upon another, start with the bottom layer being the problem in hand. So yeah, I totally agree.
Excellent. So Heeki and Dhiraj, you both are super deep with the service team on this stuff. So where do you think the AWS, the future development in this space going?
So there could be, the world is
Yeah.
our pickle, and I do
Yeah.
have to be careful. I can't talk
Yeah,
about roadmap.
yeah, of course.
One thing that I find interesting, and this is one thing that I'm hoping that our service teams
Mm-hmm.
will work through, is I know that as developers you have to write code, but you also have to operate it. One thing that I want, like my dream vision of what we're going to eventually deliver here at AWS, or I hope we'll deliver, is I could log into the AWS console. Maybe I had some issue. Again, as much as we say we wish we could write perfect code, none of us do. Not even Dhiraj, Raj, or myself. And so we're going to have some issues. And again, Werner always says that in the
Failure
cloud,
is a given.
everything will always,
fail.
will always fail. And so I would love it so that if there is a failure, I could log into the AWS console and say, what just happened? And again, I think we have a vision here where that's the type of world that we're going to be operating in.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really excited about building here.
Yeah, the other aspect, and I think I've shared this with you, Heeki, is one of the vision that I have is, for example, I wrote a Lambda function and I uploaded it. I don't know what is the memory configuration that is optimal for my Lambda function. I want maybe generative AI or the service team building something around that's telling me after a couple of usage, they should be suggesting me that, hey, you know what, the way you have written the code and for how it is being used, maybe 1024 MB is not a good memory configuration. You might have to use 1536. That has to come from the service itself. That enlightens how your code is going to behave in production. So that is something that I'm looking forward to. The goal here is, this is again working backwards, right? So every customer will want their Lambda function or their EKS or ECS container to perform with performance and cost in mind. So when that is suggested by the service itself, you cannot be much more customer obsessed than that, right?
Okay, so the next section is rapid fire question answer.
Oh boy.
Please,
I'm always terrible at rapid fire.
Yeah.
I remember doing this last
I
year.
remember last year's rapid fire.
so they have no idea about what questions are
Get
coming.
ready.
Oh
yeah,
man.
we'll keep it easy. We'll keep it easy.
Okay.
Okay. Favorite reInvent announcement so far?
Bedrock data automation, which replaces a lot of hand wiring when it comes to intelligent document processing.
Okay, how about you?
I think the Aurora D-SQL. I'm a big fan of Mark Brooker, and the distributed Aurora database is really exciting. I think especially a lot of our global financial services customers and a lot of our strategic customers will be excited about
Yeah,
that.
I'll need to see. Okay.
Excellent. I'll start with you this time. Favorite Gen AI use case?
Favorite Gen AI use case? Can you go to Dhiraj first?
What I've seen, it depends from customer to customer, but I have spanned across multiple customers, but it's a rapid fire. For me, the favorite Gen AI use case is actually multimodal document processing. The reason I say that is because we have so much of legacy documents that are stacked somewhere in an archive. Suddenly they got the life back to it the moment we talk about generative AI. So a lot of potential in that. So that's what I feel good.
I don't know if I'm quite as deep as Dhiraj on this one. I think the thing that I find interesting, at least, is the way that so there's a lot of these new models are doing a lot of reasoning during inference.
Yeah.
And so the ability to not just give me a text response back, but these multi-model ones where maybe I put in an image and then they do a bunch of processing, get some information, and then reason about what's in the image, and then can respond back. Again, not as specific
that being
as that.
said, models can take actions right now. So
Yeah.
if you have not heard, Claude's latest 3.5 V2 Sonnet model can actually interact with your computer.
Yeah.
You can send prompts,
Yeah.
and they can interact, and they can open an application for you, they can write something for you, they can run an application for you, they can close. So that's very good. You have a computer interface. That falls back to the discussion about agents, right?
Yeah.
So this agent is so smart that if you are logging in from your laptop, it can do some interactions on your laptop. So that is also a good use case.
Excellent. Next question. Favorite LLM model?
At this point of time, it's Claude Sonnet 3.5. Yeah.
3.5 V2, agree. That's the one
Yeah.
that I'm using as well.
Okay. I'm very impressed with the new Nova one.
Yeah, I've not
the
played
Nova
with it yet.
Real.
I did see the announcements with it, but I've not played with it yet.
haven't played with
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, 10 years of serverless. Favorite serverless service?
It has to be step functions for me.
functions?
I love Lambda. but it has to be step functions because what I feel is step functions is like the brother of Lambda that enables Lambda in so many ways. For example, if Lambda is limited to 15 minutes, step functions comes and puts the hands on the Lambda shoulder and says, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
I can help you with writing multiple Lambdas and go past that 15 minutes. So I love step functions.
Yeah.
That's a good way to say that, yeah.
I'm gonna +1 that, and I'm gonna do a little plug for 2 announcements we talked about with step functions. So we just introduced what we call variables with step functions. So you can essentially think of it like a global variable. So it's an ability to save additional state data throughout the execution. And we also introduced another way to parse and manipulate data in a workflow using something called JSONata. So again, we had a former way of doing it. So there is a blog post, maybe we could post it as a resource. But again, it makes it a more powerful and expressive way to be able to manipulate and translate data as we're going through these workflows. And it also can plug in not only with Lambda, but also Bedrock and a lot of these generative AI use cases. So +1.
JSONata, if you are doing step functions and have been using JSON path, you will start loving JSONata the moment you start putting your hands into it. You can do so much more with JSONata and variables. So yeah, the blog post will elaborate and the user guide is also well written.
Excellent. Okay, so reinvents are always fun but exhausting. Okay, so any vacation plans? If you have to go one place to recharge and relax, what would that be? Your mansion in Ohio.
No, I would love to go back to India as soon as possible just to visit my parents and have a good time in India. I think it's time I've started missing India a bit. It has been a long time I haven't visited, but yeah, if I will love India more than any other vacation spot as of now. But once I come back from India, maybe I will have some like exotic places where I can visit.
Got it.
I think for now, home in my bed for some rest. I'm in the middle of a renovation right now, so there's a lot of stuff, crazy stuff going on. But beyond that, I think my next one would be I love snowboarding. I have 3 kids. I've also taught all 3 of them to snowboard. Last year was an achievement for our family where I could take all 3 of them up onto the slopes. So this January, we're going to spend some time on the slopes. That's going to be my getaway.
Excellent. All right. How can people connect with you folks?
So my simple one, I've created, because there's a lot of different places, I've done this on Linktree. So if you actually go on Linktree/Heeki Park, you can get a bunch of my socials, my LinkedIn, etc.
Linktree, I didn't know that. Okay.
Linktree.
For me, it'll be LinkedIn as of now. Next time when we meet, it'll be Linktree because I just learned something new from Heeki. So you can go to LinkedIn, find D Mahapatro. You'll see me, and in Twitter or X, I'm there, but I'm not that much active as I'm more active in LinkedIn.
Yeah, we can share those links with you.
Yeah, I'll share everything in the description. Thanks again for tuning in. That's it for this one. I'll see you guys and girls in the next one. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.